In the darkness between stars, where ancient tombs sleep beneath forgotten sands, a secret was born that would shake the galaxy to its core. A Jedi Master, broken and bleeding, stumbled through the void. The extragalactic invaders had shattered his body, implanted living coral into his flesh, turned him into something neither light nor dark. In his agony, he found a tomb. In that tomb, he found a ghost, and that ghost whispered a truth that would doom trillions. 130 years after the fall of the Emperor, when the galaxy believed the Sith extinct, when the Jedi walked freely among the stars, when peace seemed eternal at last, the shadows moved. They had been waiting, planning, growing. An entire order of Sith Lords, hundreds strong, emerged from the unknown regions like a dark tide. But these were not the Sith of old. These Sith did not betray each other. These Sith served one master, one vision, one terrible purpose. The galaxy would burn, the Jedi would fall, and at the center of it all stood a being who had conquered death itself, a warrior who became a warlord who became a monster who became a god. His name was Darth Krayt, and his story begins not with power, but with pain. Hey everyone, tonight we dive into one of the most ambitious and terrifying Sith plots in Star Wars history. The complete timeline of the One Sith Order and the Dark Lord who built an empire on patience, unity, and absolute devotion. This is the story of how a fallen Jedi created a Sith regime that nearly succeeded where all others failed. Now here is something interesting. Around 62% of you watching right now are not subscribed. If you enjoy these deep dives into Star Wars lore, hit that subscribe button. It genuinely helps the channel grow and lets me create more content like this. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me where in the world you are watching from and what time it is there. Knowing this community spans across different countries and time zones makes this so much more special. So go ahead, dim those lights, get comfortable under your blanket, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background noise, and let us journey together into the shadows of the One Sith. The tale begins not in darkness, but in light, in the golden age of the Jedi, when the Republic still stood strong and the Clone Wars raged across 1,000 worlds. His name was Asharad Het, born on the desert world of Tatooine to a Jedi Master who had left the Order to live among the Tusken Raiders. Young Het grew up with sand in his lungs and a warrior's heart beating in his chest. He wore the traditional wrappings of the Sand People, spoke their harsh tongue, understood their brutal code of survival, but the Force flowed through him like a river of stars. When his father was murdered, Asharad returned to the Jedi. Master Ki-Adi-Mundi took him as a Padawan. The council watched him carefully, this wild child of the desert who meditated with a rifle across his knees, who carried both a lightsaber and a Gaddafi stick, who never quite forgot the Tusken teaching that strength meant survival and mercy meant death. During the Clone Wars, Het fought with distinction. He led troops from the front, his twin lightsabers carving through battle droids like wind through sand. He fought alongside Anakin Skywalker on Agonar, two warriors who understood each other in ways the peaceful Jedi never could. Both had tasted darkness. Both had killed without hesitation when survival demanded it. And then Order 66 shattered the galaxy. Het survived where thousands of Jedi fell. He felt them die, every single one, their lights winking out across the stars like candles in a storm. He reached out through the Force and found only silence, vast and terrible. The Jedi Order, 10,000 years of light and wisdom, extinguished in a single day. He fled to Tatooine. He took command of his father's Tusken tribe. He tried to forget the Force, forget the Jedi, forget everything except survival in the wastes. For years he lived as a desert warlord, raiding moisture farmers, teaching the young raiders the old ways, becoming more Tusken than Jedi with each passing season. But peace was not his destiny. 25 years after the fall of the Republic, they came, the Yuuzhan Vong, invaders from beyond the galactic rim, organic ships and living weapons, immune to the Force, unstoppable as a plague. They swept through the outer rim like locusts, consuming worlds, reshaping planets, leaving only death in their wake. The galaxy screamed for help. The New Republic stumbled and fell. The Jedi, so few now, fought desperately against an enemy they could barely sense, and Asharid Het, who had tried to leave that war behind, found himself pulled back into the fire. He would fight the Yuuzhan Vong for years. He would watch worlds burn. He would see Jedi die by the hundreds, their powers useless against an enemy the Force could not touch. And in the end, the invaders would capture him. They would break him. They would plant their living seeds deep in his flesh. And from that agony, something new would be born. Something the galaxy had never seen. Something that would make the Empire of Palpatine look like a brief and fleeting shadow. But that transformation, that descent into darkness, that moment when Asharid Het died and Darth Krayt was born, that story waits just ahead in the shadows. The Yuuzhan Vong did not simply capture Asharid Het, they unmade him. It happened in the 3rd year of their invasion, during a battle on the ice world of Bimiel. Het had been leading a strike team of Jedi and Republic soldiers, attempting to disable a Yuuzhan Vong worldship before it could terraform another innocent planet into a grotesque copy of their lost homeworld. The mission failed. His team died around him, their screams cut short by amphistaffs and thud bugs, and Het, wounded and desperate, was dragged alive into the belly of a slave ship. They took him to chambers that pulsed like living organs, where the walls breathed and the floor bled. The Yuuzhan Vong viewed pain as prayer, suffering as devotion to their gods. They would teach this fallen Jedi their religion through his own flesh. They bound him in the embrace of pain, a creature bred specifically for torture, its tendrils hooking into nerve clusters, sending waves of agony through his body that made screaming pointless. Days blurred into weeks. Weeks collapsed into months. They asked him no questions. They wanted no information. The pain itself was the point. Breaking him was an act of worship. And then they implanted the coral seeds. Yuuzhan Vong biotechnology operated on principles the Republic had never encountered. Living armor that bonded with flesh, weapons that grew from genetic templates. And these seeds, yorick coral designed to spread through a body, slowly transforming living tissue into organic armor. In a willing host, the process granted incredible protection. In an unwilling slave, it was a leash, a way to control through constant suffering. I felt them burrow into his chest, his shoulders, his arms, felt them begin to grow, spreading like roots through muscle and bone. The pain was beyond anything the embrace had inflicted. This was not external torture. This was his own body betraying him from within. But Asharid Het had been raised by Tusken raiders. He knew survival. He knew that when pain became too great to resist, you did not fight it. You accepted it. You made it part of you. You turned it into fuel. He stopped screaming, started meditating. Not the peaceful meditation of the Jedi, but something older, darker, the focus of a predator tracking prey across endless dunes. He took the pain and compressed it into a dense star in the center of his being, and from that star he drew power. The Yuuzhan Vong noticed the change. Their captive had stopped begging for death. His eyes, when they looked at his tortures now, held something that made even these warrior zealots uncomfortable. Not fear, not even hatred. Something colder, something patient. One night, in the ship's false darkness, Het reached deep into the Force in ways the Jedi forbade, not to sense or guide or heal, to kill. He crushed the heart of his nearest guard without moving, feeling the organ rupture through the Force. The guard collapsed. Het took his amphistaff, the living weapon wrapping around his arm like it recognized a kindred spirit. The escape that followed was not heroic, it was butchery. He moved through the ship like a ghost, killing silently when he could, viciously when he could not. The coral in his body burned with every movement, but he channeled that pain into each strike, each broken neck, each life extinguished. By the time he reached an escape pod and jettisoned into space, 17 Yuuzhan Vong lay dead behind him. He drifted for 3 days before a smuggler ship picked up his pod. The smugglers took one look at him and almost jettisoned the pod again. The man inside barely looked human anymore. The coral had spread across his chest and shoulders, creating patches of reddish armor that pulsed with his heartbeat. His eyes had changed, the whites yellowed, the pupils dilated like a spice addict. And when he spoke, his voice carried an edge that made the smugglers' hands drift toward their blasters. Het paid them well for passage to the nearest Republic world and disappeared into the crowds. But he knew he could not go back to the Jedi. The Order would sense the darkness in him immediately. They would try to heal him, try to remove the coral, try to guide him back to the light. And he no longer wanted the light. The light had failed. The light had let the Jedi fall. The light had allowed the Yuuzhan Vong to slaughter billions while the Republic debated and hesitated and hoped for diplomatic solutions. He needed answers. He needed power. He needed to understand how to survive in a galaxy that killed the merciful. So Asurid Het turned his ship toward the unknown regions, toward the dark spaces between the spiral arms where old things slept and older secrets waited. He followed whispers in the Force, fragments of Sith legend that every Jedi learned as warnings. The ancient Sith lords had built an empire once. They had commanded the dark side like Jedi never could, and they had failed, yes, destroyed by their own ambition and infighting. But before they fell, they had been powerful, more powerful than anything the galaxy had seen since. Months of searching brought him to Korriban. The Sith homeworld hung in space like a warning. Red sand stretched to horizons under a bloated sun. The Valley of the Dark Lords carved through mountains, each tomb a monument to ancient evil. The Republic had quarantined this place after the Jedi Civil War centuries ago, but quarantines meant nothing in the chaos of the Yuuzhan Vong invasion. Het landed his ship in the valley and stepped out onto sand that crunched like powdered bone. The dark side saturated this world so deeply that even standing still felt like drowning. Every breath tasted of ash and old blood. The Force here was not a river but a whirlpool, pulling at him, inviting him to let go and sink. Het walked among the tombs for days. He read the inscriptions in languages he had never studied but somehow understood. Ajunta Paul, Marka Ragnos, Tulak, Horde, Frieden Nad, names that had terrorized the galaxy millennia ago. Each tomb radiated power and warning in equal measure. Enter here, they seemed to say, and you will find what you seek, but you will pay for it in ways you cannot imagine. In the deepest tomb, carved into a mountain's heart, he found the holocron. Sith holocrons were not like their Jedi counterparts. Jedi holocrons glowed blue and silver, peaceful and inviting. Sith holocrons were pyramids of black crystal that seemed to absorb light, that whispered even when dormant, that promised power to anyone foolish enough to open them. This one belonged to Sargzine, a Sith lord, so ancient her wars predated the Old Republic itself. Het placed his hand on the pyramid's surface. It felt warm, almost alive, and then it opened. The hologram that emerged was not a simple recording. It was a presence, something that had been waiting in that crystal prison for thousands of years, watching through the Force for someone worthy of its teachings. Su Exan appeared as a woman wrapped in robes that seemed woven from shadow, her face beautiful and terrible, her eyes reflecting starlight that had died before humans left their home world. She studied Het for a long moment. Then she smiled. "You are broken," she said. "Good. Only the broken can be reforged into something stronger. The Jedi broke you with their weakness. The Yuuzhan Vong broke you with their strength. But I can teach you to break the galaxy itself." And for the first time since his capture, Asharid Het felt something other than pain. He felt purpose. Zog-Zan taught him the true history of the Sith, not the simplified versions the Jedi taught their younglings. She showed him the original Sith Empire, a civilization that had conquered hundreds of worlds through mastery of the dark side. She explained how they had fallen not to the Jedi, but to themselves, each Sith Lord betraying the others in an endless cycle of ambition and murder. She showed him Darth Bane, who had looked at that cycle and created the rule of two. One master, one apprentice, no more. The master held the power. The apprentice craved it. When the apprentice grew strong enough, they would kill the master and take an apprentice of their own. This way, Bane reasoned, the Sith would grow stronger with each generation instead of diluting their power through infighting. "But you see the flaw," Zog-Zan said. "The rule of two demands betrayal. It builds treachery into the foundation. How can an order built on mutual murder ever achieve lasting victory? The apprentice spends half their energy plotting against the master. The master spends half theirs watching for the knife in the dark. Such an order might produce powerful individuals, but it will never produce a powerful civilization." Het understood immediately. The Jedi had failed because they were too merciful, too slow, too bound by rules that assumed everyone could be redeemed. But the Sith had failed because they trusted no one, not even their own apprentices, and so could never build anything that lasted beyond a single generation. "There must be another way," Het said. "There is," Zog-Zan replied, "but it requires you to let go of everything you were. The Jedi Master must die. The Tusken Warlord must die. Even Asharid Het must die. You must descend into the deepest tomb and face what waits there. And if you survive, you will emerge as something new, something the galaxy has never seen." Het spent 40 days in that tomb, fasting and meditating, studying Zog-Zan's teachings until he could recite them in his sleep. The coral in his body continued to spread, covering more of his chest, creeping up his neck. The pain never stopped, but he learned to use it, to channel it, to transform it into dark side energy that flowed through him like molten metal. On the 41st day, he descended into the lowest chamber of Zog-Zan's tomb. The walls there were carved with Sith runes that seemed to move in the torchlight, forming words in languages that predated the Republic by millennia. At the chamber's center stood an altar of black stone, and on that altar lay a mask. It was ancient beyond measure, forged from a great dragon's skull, and bound with Sith alchemy. The eye sockets glowed with faint red light. The teeth were still sharp. "Put it on," Zog-Zan whispered from the holocron. "Let the old you die. Let the new you be born." Asharid Het picked up the mask. It was heavier than it looked, dense with dark side energy. He could feel it reaching for him, eager to bond, eager to transform. He thought of his father, murdered for leaving the Jedi. He thought of his Tusken tribe, slaughtered by Imperial stormtroopers. He thought of the Jedi, scattered and broken. He thought of the Yuuzhan Vong, their torture, their coral seeds spreading through his flesh, even now. And he thought of the galaxy that had allowed all of this to happen. A galaxy too weak to save itself, too divided to stand against threats like the Vong, too merciful to do what survival demanded. He placed the mask on his face. The transformation was not gentle. The mask fused to his skin, its edges sinking into flesh, its power flooding through him like poison and cure at once. Every cell in his body screamed. The coral seeds went wild, spreading faster, covering his chest and shoulders in reddish armor. But instead of weakening him, they made him stronger. The pain that should have killed him became fuel, became power, became the foundation of something new. When he finally removed his hands from his face, a Sharad Het was gone. The being that stood in that ancient tomb called himself Darth Krayt, after the dragon whose skull he wore, after the creature that survived in the harshest desert by being more patient and more deadly than anything else that lived there. And Darth Krayt had a vision not of conquest through betrayal like the old Sith, not of peace through mercy like the Jedi, but of order through unity, of power through patience, of an empire built not on the rule of two, but on the rule of one. One Sith Order, one Dark Lord, one purpose that would unite hundreds of Sith under a single vision, and that vision would reshape the galaxy into something stronger, something that could survive anything the universe threw at it. It would take a century. It would require patience that no Sith had ever shown. It would demand that individual ambition be sacrificed for collective power. But Darth Krayt had time. The coral in his body would keep him alive far longer than any human should live, and he had learned patience in the deserts of Tatooine, learned it in the torture chambers of the Yuuzhan Vong, learned it in the tomb of Soazine. He would build his order in secret. He would wait for the perfect moment, and when he finally struck, the galaxy would have no choice but to kneel. The transformation was complete. The fallen Jedi was dead. The Sith Lord was born, and the one Sith would rise. Darth Krayt did not leave Korriban immediately. The Valley of the Dark Lords held more secrets than one holocron could teach, and he intended to learn them all before he began his great work. For months he explored tomb after tomb, seeking the wisdom and failures of every Sith Lord who had come before. In the tomb of Darth Bane, he found holocrons that explained the rule of two in exhaustive detail. Bane had been brilliant. Krayt admitted, after the Sith Empire's destruction, after hundreds of Sith Lords had killed each other in their hunger for power, Bane had looked at the carnage and seen the pattern. Too many Sith meant too much ambition. Every Lord wanted to rule. Every apprentice plotted against their master. The Order destroyed itself from within every single time. So Bane had created a new rule, only two Sith at any moment. The master held the knowledge. The apprentice craved it. When the apprentice grew strong enough to kill the master, they proved themselves worthy of the title. Then they took an apprentice of their own, and the cycle continued, each generation stronger than the last, the Sith as a blade endlessly sharpened against itself. For 1,000 years it had worked. The rule of two had produced Sith Lords of incredible power. Darth Sidious had nearly conquered the galaxy, ruling as Emperor for decades. His success had proven Bane's wisdom. But Sidious had fallen. Betrayed by his own apprentice, just as the rule of two demanded, Darth Vader had killed him and died himself moments later. And with their deaths, the Sith had ended again. 1,000 years of careful planning, destroyed in a single moment, because the rule itself required betrayal at its foundation. Krayt stood in Bane's tomb, studying the holocron, and saw the fatal flaw. The rule of two made the Sith powerful as individuals, but vulnerable as an order. One lucky strike, one moment of weakness, and the entire lineage could be extinguished. It had happened before. It had just happened again with Sidious. There had to be another way. In the tomb of Darth Andedu, he found knowledge of Sith immortality techniques, ways to transfer one's essence into new bodies, to cheat death itself. But these techniques required victims, required constant murder and possession, and Krayt saw how that too led to weakness. An immortal Sith who hopped from body to body would never truly master any of them, would always be vulnerable during the transfer, and more importantly, they would never build anything lasting. You could not create a civilization when you were too busy hunting for your next host. In the tomb of Marka Ragnas, he studied the old Sith Empire at its height. Thousands of Sith Lords ruling thousands of worlds. Incredible power, yes, but also incredible instability. Every lord had their own ambitions. Every territory had its own would-be emperor. The Empire had torn itself apart from within a dozen times before the Jedi finally destroyed it. Krayt meditated on these lessons for weeks. The old Sith had failed because too many lords led to chaos. Bane's Sith had failed because too few lords led to fragility. What was needed was something in between, something that preserved unity without demanding the constant betrayal of the rule of two, something that could grow strong over time without collapsing into civil war. The answer came to him during a meditation in Sorgzan's tomb. She had been watching his studies, offering occasional guidance through her holocron, pleased with his progress. "You seek to unite the Sith under a single vision," she said. "But you know the old ways cannot work, so you must create a new way. Not rule of two, not the chaos of the old empire, something that has never been tried. The rule of one," Krayt said. Iso-Agzan's hologram smiled. "Explain." "One Sith order," Krayt began, thinking through it as he spoke. "One Dark Lord to lead it, but not just one apprentice. Many Sith, perhaps hundreds, all serving the same vision, all working toward the same goal." Agzan tilted her head. "And what stops them from betraying you, from killing you, and seizing power as Sith have always done?" Krayt had thought about this. The answer was not complicated, but it required something no Sith had ever achieved: absolute loyalty. The kind of loyalty that transcends personal ambition, the kind that makes each Sith see themselves not as individuals competing for power, but as hands of a single body, working together toward a common purpose. "I will teach them that unity is strength," Krayt said, "that the Sith fail when they fight each other and succeed when they work together. I will show them that serving the one Sith gives them more power than they could ever achieve alone. But more than that, I will give them something to believe in. Not just power for its own sake, not just domination, but a vision of the galaxy made strong, made orderly, made perfect. The Jedi preach peace, but their peace is weakness. They allow the corrupt to rule, the incompetent to lead, the weak to drag down the strong. My order will prune that weakness. We will cultivate the galaxy like a garden, removing the diseased growth, allowing only the strong to flourish. And you believe Sith will accept this?" "Bearers," Agzan asked, "will suppress their ambition for this vision." "The strong ones will," Krayt replied. "The truly strong understand that patience wins wars, that a century of preparation is worth more than a day of glory. I will recruit carefully. I will train slowly. I will build this order not in years but in decades, and those who cannot accept the rule of one will be removed before they can infect the others." The Solzan's smile widened. "Then go, Darth Krayt, build your impossible order. Prove that the Sith can be more than we have ever been. I will watch from my crystal prison and see if you succeed where all others failed." Krayt left Korriban with 3 holocrons, including Soxan's. He also carried fragments from a dozen other tombs, pieces of Sith knowledge that would form the foundation of his new order's training. But more importantly, he carried a vision clearer than anything the Sith had possessed in millennia. He spent the next 5 years in the unknown regions, exploring worlds the Republic had never charted, seeking locations for his hidden bases. He found Had Abaddon, a dark side Nexus world where the Force itself felt thick and poisonous, perfect for training young Sith in controlled environments. He found Korriban itself could be used, hidden from Republic sensors by Sith alchemy that made it appear uninhabitable. He established supply lines with smugglers and pirates who asked no questions. And then he began recruiting. His first student was a failed Jedi named Widialok. The man was Chagrian, long-lived and patient, a historian who had left the Order decades ago after disagreeing with their passive approach to galactic threats. Crate found him on a forgotten archive world, still studying, still learning, still searching for a path that made sense. A Crate showed him the holocrons, explained the rule of one, offered him not just power, but purpose. Wyalok listened for 3 days straight, asking questions, challenging assumptions, testing the philosophy from every angle. On the 4th day he knelt and swore loyalty. "You will be my hand," Crate told him, "my voice when I cannot speak, my memory when I forget. Your children and your children's children will serve this order, preserving its knowledge across generations." Wyalok accepted. He took the title Darth Wyalok and became the first of many. Next came Nile, a Nagai warrior whose people had been slaughtered by criminals the Republic refused to stop. Crate found him on a battlefield, surrounded by corpses covered in blood, eyes empty of everything except rage. But it was controlled rage, focused rage, the kind that could be shaped into a weapon. "Join me," Crate said, "and I will teach you to make the galaxy bleed for what it did to your people." Nile knelt without hesitation. He became the Order's first enforcer, the warrior who would hunt the One Sith's enemies and show no mercy. Then came Maladi, a Devaronian scientist expelled from Republic research centers for conducting experiments the ethics board deemed too cruel. She had been experimenting with biotoxins, with ways to target specific species, with weapons that killed slowly and painfully. The Republic called her a monster. Crate called her brilliant. She joined eagerly, seeing in the One Sith the resources and freedom to pursue her research without limitation. More followed. Strife, a human warrior betrayed by his own Imperial unit. Talon decades later, a Twi'lek orphan raised in slavery who killed her masters and fled into the darkness. Azad, a Quarren whose people had suffered under Mon Calamari dominance for centuries. Each recruit was chosen carefully. Crate interviewed them personally, testing their patience, their loyalty, their ability to see beyond immediate gratification. Those who wanted power for its own sake were rejected. Those who could not accept orders were rejected. Those who showed signs of the old Sith's self-destructive ambition were rejected. But those who understood that unity meant strength, that patience meant victory, that serving something greater than themselves would make them more powerful than they could ever be alone, those were welcomed, those were trained, those became the foundation of the One Sith. The training was brutal. Crate did not coddle his students. Pain was a teacher, and failure had consequences. But it was purposeful brutality. Every lesson had meaning. Every punishment taught something, and always, always the message was reinforced. We are one Sith. We serve one vision. We work toward one goal. Your power comes from the Order. The Order's power comes from unity. He taught them history, making them study every Sith failure in exhaustive detail. Look at Revan's empire, he would say, powerful, brilliant, destroyed within a generation because his apprentice betrayed him. Look at Darth Bane's lineage. 1,000 years of careful planning ended in a moment because the rule itself required betrayal. We will not repeat these mistakes. We will not betray each other. We will not fight among ourselves, because we understand that our true enemy is not each other. Our true enemy is the weakness that plagues the galaxy. The Jedi who preach mercy while innocents die. The Republic that debates while threats multiply. The chaos that allows the strong to be dragged down by the weak. And the students listened, not because they feared Christ, though they did. Not because they wanted his approval, though they did. But because the philosophy made sense. It answered questions that had troubled every thinking Sith since the Order's founding. How do you create something that lasts? How do you build an empire that survives its founder? The answer was the rule of one, and they believed By the time the Yuuzhan Vong War ended in 29 AB, Krayt had 50 trained Sith Lords and 3 hidden bases. By 40 AB, he had 200 Sith and 10 bases. The Order grew slowly, carefully, invisibly. No one in the Republic knew they existed. The Jedi sensed nothing. Even other dark side users, like the remnants of Palpatine's hands, never detected them. Krayt had learned how to cloak entire worlds in the Force, making them appear lifeless to any scan. He had established protocols for his agents operating in Republic space that kept them hidden even from Jedi Masters. The one Sith became ghosts, watching and waiting and growing stronger, while the galaxy forgot the Sith had ever existed. And through it all, Krayt himself remained the beating heart of the Order. His vision drove them. His patience steadied them. His power awed them. The coral in his body continued to spread, covering more of his torso, creeping up his neck. It caused constant pain, but he transformed that pain into dark side energy, becoming stronger with each passing year. Some nights, in his private chambers, he would wonder if he had truly found the answer, if the rule of one would succeed where all other Sith philosophies had failed. But then he would look at his students, working together without betrayal, united under a single vision, and he would know. The one Sith would not fail, could not fail, because they had learned the lesson every previous Sith Order had missed. Unity was not weakness. It was the ultimate power, and that power would reshape the galaxy. The galaxy moved on, ignorant of the darkness growing in its forgotten corners. The Yuuzhan Vong War ended in 29 ABW with the invaders defeated, driven back beyond the galactic rim by a coalition that cost millions of lives and left entire sectors in ruins. The survivors rebuilt slowly, traumatized, struggling to remember what peace felt like. The Jedi Order, decimated during the war, began the painful process of finding and training new students. Luke Skywalker's academy grew, bringing hope to a generation that had known only conflict. The New Republic reformed into the Galactic Alliance, attempting to learn from past mistakes to build something stronger and more unified. And in the unknown regions, Darth Krayt watched it all and smiled. The Yuuzhan Vong War had been perfect for his purposes, not because of the destruction, though that certainly weakened his future enemies, but because the chaos had distracted every intelligence service, every Jedi, every Force sensitive in the galaxy. No one was looking for Sith when entire star systems were being transformed into alien hells. No one sensed the dark side rising when the whole galaxy screamed in agony. Krayt used those years to expand his order exponentially. Force sensitives displaced by the war made excellent recruits. Soldiers traumatized by what they had seen often proved receptive to Sith philosophy. Refugees from destroyed worlds had nothing left to lose and everything to gain by joining a cause that promised strength. By 35 AB, the one Sith numbered over 300. By 50 AB, they exceeded 500. Each recruit was vetted carefully, trained thoroughly, tested endlessly. Those who could not accept the rule of one disappeared without trace. Those who embraced it became part of something unprecedented in Sith history. An order that actually functioned as an order, where Sith Lords cooperated instead of competing, where knowledge was shared instead of hoarded, where the death of one member strengthened the whole rather than creating a succession crisis. But recruitment was only one part of Krayt's strategy. The other, equally important part, was infiltration. The one Sith did not simply hide and train. They inserted themselves into the galaxy's power structures like parasites burrowing into a host. It started small, a Sith agent taking a position as a clerk in the Galactic Alliance Senate, another joining the military as a junior officer, a third becoming a maintenance worker in the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. These agents were not traditional Sith. They carried no lightsabers, displayed no obvious Force powers, drew no attention. They were sleeper agents, some so deep undercover they would not be activated for decades. Their job was not to fight. It was to watch, to report, and to wait. As years passed, the network grew. Sith agents rose through military ranks, their promotions aided by subtle force suggestion and genuine competence. They infiltrated corporations, criminal syndicates, intelligence agencies. They married into political families. They became professors at universities, journalists at major news services, administrators in bureaucracies so vast and complex that no one would ever notice one more functionary. And every single one of them was absolutely loyal to Darth Krayt. The rule of one worked because Krayt had made himself the living embodiment of the Order's purpose. His vision was their vision. His patience was their patience. They did not serve him out of fear, though they feared him. They served because they believed, because the philosophy made sense, because being part of something greater than themselves gave their lives meaning in a way individual ambition never could. Darth Wyerlock managed much of this expansion. The Chagrian had proven himself invaluable, his long lifespan and methodical nature perfect for a plan that would take decades to execute. He established the Order's bureaucracy, its record-keeping systems, its training protocols. When Krayt entered his first extended stasis period in 47 AB weakened by the coral spread, Wyerlock assumed control seamlessly. This was another innovation of the rule of one. The Order did not depend entirely on Krayt's presence. He had built institutions that could function without him, led by trusted hands who understood the vision completely. When he woke from stasis 3 years later, the Order had not just survived but grown stronger. Wyerlock reported every detail, every recruitment, every operation, without once attempting to seize power for himself. Try finding that in a traditional Sith Order. By 60 AB, the one Sith controlled secret bases on a dozen worlds. They had agents in every major government in the galaxy. They had accumulated wealth through carefully managed criminal enterprises, and legitimate businesses operated through shell companies, and they had built an army. The Sith troopers were Krayt's personal project, combining what he had learned from the Yuuzhan Vong with Sith alchemy and imperial military doctrine. The process was not gentle. Force-sensitive individuals, usually recruited from fringe worlds or abducted from populations who would not be missed, were implanted with coral seeds. The seeds were enhanced through Sith science to spread faster, to bond more completely, to create organic armor that made the host incredibly strong and completely loyal. Then came the conditioning. Mental programming that erased individual will, replacing it with absolute devotion to the one Sith and Darth Krayt. The subjects did not question orders, did not feel fear, did not hesitate in combat. They were soldiers perfected through dark side alchemy, and they were terrifying. By 75 AB, Krayt had 10,000 Sith troopers training in secret facilities. By 100 AB, he had 100,000, an army that could conquer planets, hidden in the unknown regions, waiting for the Order to strike. But Krayt was patient. He watched the Galactic Alliance stabilize and grow. He watched the Jedi Order expand to over 100 masters and thousands of knights. He watched the Imperial remnant, still clinging to existence in the Outer Rim, slowly gaining strength under a new dynasty led by Jagged Fel. He watched and he waited, because he knew that timing was everything. Strike too early, and the galaxy might unite against him. Strike too late, and his enemies might grow too strong to defeat. The perfect moment would come. He just had to recognize it. During his waking periods, Krayt trained his most promising students personally. Darth Nai, who had become a master of Jarkai combat and could kill Jedi Knights in seconds. Darth Maladi, whose biotoxins could wipe out entire species or target specific genetic markers. Darth Strife, a tactical genius who would later command armies. And later, much later, Darth Talon, a Twi'lek whose raw power and absolute loyalty made her one of Krait's most trusted hands. Each hand specialized in a different aspect of the coming war. Nile would hunt Jedi, Maladi would create weapons of terror, Strife would command military operations, Talon would serve as personal enforcer and assassin. Together they formed the core of Krait's leadership, each absolutely devoted to the rule of one, each seeing themselves as part of a greater whole, rather than competitors for power. The coral in Cracy's body continued its slow spread. By 90 ABY, it covered over half his torso, creating armor that was both protection and prison. The pain had become a constant companion, background noise he had learned to ignore except during the worst flare-ups. He spent more time in stasis now, sometimes years at a stretch, letting his body rest while the Order continued without him. Darth Wyalok III, grandson of the original, assumed the role of regent during these periods. He governed exactly as his grandfather had, exactly as Krait would have, because the rule of one had become embedded in the Order's culture. This was not a Sith waiting for his master to die so he could seize power. This was a loyal servant maintaining his lord's vision until that lord could return. And always, the one Sith remained hidden. They tested their security constantly, sending agents to probe Jedi defenses to see if any Force-sensitive could detect their presence. None could. They had learned to cloak themselves so completely that even Jedi Masters walking past a Sith agent on a busy Coruscant street would sense nothing unusual. This was not Force suppression that could be detected by skilled practitioners. This was something deeper. The one Sith had learned to make their presence feel natural, like background radiation, like the ambient darkness that existed in every being's heart. They were always there. No one ever noticed. By 110 ABI, the entire infrastructure was in place. The armies were trained, the agents were positioned, the weapons were prepared. Krait had spent 80 years building this order, longer than most beings lived, and it was finally ready. But he still waited, because one piece remained missing, one opportunity that would make victory certain instead of merely possible. The galaxy needed to be weakened first. Its governments needed to be unstable. Its people needed to be desperate for order, for strength, for someone to take control and end the chaos. And most importantly, the Jedi needed to be discredited. That opportunity would come in the form of the Ossus Project, a Jedi-led initiative to use Yuuzhan Vong biotechnology to terraform ruined worlds, to bring life back to systems devastated by the war decades earlier. It was ambitious, it was hopeful, it was exactly what the galaxy needed. Which made it the perfect thing to sabotage. Krait watched the Ossus Project's planning stages with interest. He studied the Jedi involved, identified the weak points in their security, calculated exactly how to make the project fail in the most spectacular and damaging way possible. The sabotage would have to be perfect. It could not look like sabotage at all. It had to appear as if the Jedi themselves had made catastrophic mistakes, had been reckless with dangerous technology, had prioritized their ambitions over galactic safety. When the project finally launched in 127 ABE, Krait was ready. His agents were in place, his bioweapons were prepared, and his patience, cultivated over nearly a century, was finally about to pay off. The one Sith would remain hidden for just a few more months, and then the galaxy would learn what a unified Sith Order could accomplish. The wait was almost over. The great work was about to begin, and nothing, not the Jedi, not the Galactic Alliance, not the remnants of the Empire, would be able to stop what was coming. Because they had forgotten what the Sith could be. They had forgotten that the dark side, when wielded with patience and unity instead of chaos and betrayal, was the most powerful force in the galaxy. They would remember soon, and by then, it would be far too late. In 127 AB, 130 years after Palpatine's fall, the galaxy believed it had finally found peace. The Yuuzhan Vong scars had healed. Trade flourished. The Jedi walked freely. Then the Ossus project failed. It started on Ego. The Jedi terraforming team introduced Yuuzhan Vong biotechnology designed to restore dead worlds. For 8 days, it worked perfectly. On day 9, the organisms mutated violently. Green vegetation became black poison. The atmosphere turned toxic. Within a week, billions died screaming. 3 more projects failed simultaneously. Honor, Bare, Vet, Felucia. Each planet twisted into a nightmare of mutated biology and death. The galaxy turned on the Jedi with savage fury. They unleashed forces they could not control. They killed billions through arrogance. The Galactic Alliance, facing public rage, stripped Jedi from leadership positions and terminated the project. Darth Krayt watched from Korriban and smiled. His agents had contaminated the biotechnology months earlier. The sabotage was untraceable, and the Jedi, discredited and desperate, were exactly where he needed them. Now came the Empire. Rowan Fel ruled the Imperial remnant from Bastion, a fragment of Palpatine's regime that had survived through moderation. Ambitious and frustrated by decades of Alliance dominance, Fel dreamed of restoration. Darth Wyerlock arrived at Bastion with an offer, an alliance. Vast armies, technology beyond anything the Alliance possessed, all to help restore the Empire to glory. The Fel should have questioned who offered such power for nothing in return, should have investigated, should have refused. Instead, he met with Darth Krayt himself. The Dark Lord did not hide what he was. We are the one Sith. We will provide the Force to destroy the Alliance. You will rule as Emperor. Together we bring order to chaos. Fel saw opportunity, saw his chance at legacy, saw fleets and armies that dwarfed his own scattered forces. He agreed. The war began on a dozen worlds simultaneously. Imperial fleets reinforced by hidden Sith warships struck Alliance territory with devastating precision. Sith agents sabotaged defenses from within, and leading the attacks were beings the galaxy had not seen in over a century. Sith Lords, hundreds of them. Their lightsabers igniting across battlefields, their power overwhelming the scattered Jedi defenders. The Alliance scrambled desperately, but they were unprepared. Their fleets, positioned for peace, faced coordinated offensives that knew exactly where they would be. Within the first month, 20 major worlds fell. Within 3 months, entire sectors surrendered. The Jedi tried to organize resistance, but they were outnumbered 5 to 1. Darth now led hunting parties across the galaxy, ambushing temple after temple, killing master after master. Each death brought him closer to perfect mastery of the dark side. By the end of the first year, the Alliance controlled less than half its territory. The Jedi Order was scattered and bleeding. Emperor Fel ruled from Bastion, proclaiming a new age of Imperial order. And in the shadows, Darth Krayt prepared his final moves. The Alliance was breaking. The Jedi were running. Everything proceeded exactly as planned. The war would grind on for 3 more years, but its outcome was already decided. The galaxy simply did not know it yet. The stalemate broke in 130 AB when Krayt decided to end the war with one overwhelming strike. Coruscant, the capital, the symbol of galactic government for millennia. The combined Imperial Sith fleet dropped from hyperspace at dawn, thousands of ships surrounding the planet. Alliance defense platforms opened fire, but half had been sabotaged by Sith agents. The rest were destroyed within an hour. The space battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Alliance fleet was shattered. Only Admiral Garstasi escaped with a handful of ships. Coruscant lay defenseless. On the surface, The Jedi Temple prepared for its last stand. Master Luke Skywalker, ancient but still powerful, gathered every Jedi on Coruscant. Nearly 200, from masters to younglings, they activated ancient defenses and waited. Darth Nihil led the assault with 50 Sith Lords behind him. The battle on the temple steps became legendary. Master Skywalker fought like the legend he was, cutting down Sith with blinding speed. But for every one he killed, 2 more advanced. Inside, Jedi evacuated younglings through secret tunnels. Some escaped. Others were caught by Sith strike teams who had been given the tunnel layouts decades earlier by planted agents. It took 6 hours for the temple to fall. 150 Jedi died. The survivors fled into Coruscant's underworld or escaped off-planet entirely. The Alliance government surrendered that evening. The chief of state, facing orbital bombardment that would kill billions, transferred power to Emperor Ronfell. The Galactic Alliance ceased to exist. Celebrations erupted across Imperial territory. Fell stood on a balcony overlooking Coruscant, proclaiming a new age of strength and order. 3 months later, Darth Krayt made his move. The Imperial Moffs were summoned to an emergency meeting. They arrived at a sealed chamber, expecting the Emperor. Instead, Krayt entered with Sith Lords behind him. Darth Maladi released a biotoxin from ceiling vents. Airborne, agonizing. The Moffs, who immediately pledged loyalty to Krayt, received the antidote and lived. Those who refused died choking on the floor. 12 Moffs entered, 7 left alive. All now served the Sith. Across Coruscant, coordinated strikes eliminated Fell's loyalists. Imperial knights fought desperately, but were overwhelmed. Ronfell himself barely escaped through maintenance tunnels, fleeing on a stolen shuttle while his empire collapsed. That evening, Darth Krayt sat on the Imperial throne and broadcast across the galaxy. "I am Darth Krayt, Emperor of the One Sith Empire. For a century, my order has watched this galaxy tear itself apart through weakness. No more. The One Sith will bring order, serve us, and thrive. Resist and be removed. This is not tyranny. This is evolution." The broadcast ended. The galaxy reeled. The Sith had not just returned. They had conquered everything. Ronfell fled to Bastion, declaring himself emperor in exile, with a handful of systems still loyal to him. Admiral Stasi refused to surrender, becoming a pirate admiral raiding Sith supply lines with his scattered fleet. The surviving Jedi went underground, gathering on the hidden world of Tyvus, with fewer than 100 members remaining. The galaxy fractured into 3 factions. Krayt's Sith Empire controlling most of known space, Fell's empire in exile, clinging to legitimacy with almost no territory, and the Alliance remnant scattered and desperate. It should have ended there. The Sith should have mopped up resistance within months. But Darth Krayt made a mistake. He became obsessed with a single target, a descendant of Luke Skywalker named Cade, a rogue who had left the Jedi, who worked as a bounty hunter, who wanted nothing to do with his legacy. Krayt saw in Cade a chance to prove that even Skywalkers could be turned. He sent Darth Talon to hunt him, to capture him, to bring him to Coruscant for personal conversion. It was an obsession that would cost him dearly, but that reckoning still lay ahead. For now, the Dark Lord sat on his throne, master of the galaxy, surrounded by loyal Sith, believing he had finally achieved lasting victory. The first years of Sith rule established brutal efficiency. Krayt did not hide behind bureaucracy like Palpatine. He ruled openly as a Sith Lord and expected the galaxy to accept it. Surprisingly, many did. Worlds that had suffered under Alliance corruption found Sith governance harsh but effective. Decisions were made quickly. Justice was consistent. Pirates who had operated with impunity suddenly faced Sith troopers who could not be bribed. Some sectors thrived. Their economies grew. Their people enjoyed security they had not known in decades. The cost was freedom, but many valued safety over liberty. Worlds that resisted paid terrible prices. Orbital bombardment, labor camps, entire cities leveled as examples. The brutality was calculated. Crate wanted everyone to understand that resistance meant death for everyone, not just fighters. Within 2 years, open rebellion decreased dramatically, not from support, but from terror. Coruscant transformed under Sith rule. The Jedi Temple became the Temple of the Sith. Meditation chambers, where younglings trained, became torture rooms, where Darth Maladi conducted experiments. Statues of ancient Sith lords replaced Jedi monuments. Crate's administrative structure was elegant. Each hand commanded a different aspect. Darth Wylock managed bureaucracy. Darth Maladi ran intelligence. Darth Naladi ran intelligence. Darth Naladi ran intelligence. Darth Strife controlled the converted Imperial Knights. Darth Talon served as personal enforcer. Each hand was absolutely loyal through belief in the rule of one. Their power came from the Order, not individual ambition. This made the Sith Empire function with machine efficiency. The Sith Trooper legions expanded rapidly. Crate could now recruit Force sensitives openly. Many were taken from families under threat of execution. Others volunteered seeking power. Each underwent coral seed implantation, mental conditioning, and brutal training. By 132 ABA, over 500,000 Sith troopers maintained order across the Empire. But beneath the surface, problems grew. Cade Skywalker proved impossible to capture. Darth Talon hunted him across a dozen worlds, fought him twice, nearly killed him once. He kept escaping, kept surviving. Crate's obsession with converting a Skywalker grew with each failed hunt, distracting him from more pressing concerns. Like the growing alliance between Roan Fel and Admiral Stasi, two bitter enemies cooperating out of desperation. In 135 ABY, they broke the Sith blockade of Bastion together, their first joint victory broadcast across the HoloNet. Crate felt something unfamiliar. Doubt, not about ultimate victory, but about timeline. The Resistance was supposed to collapse. Instead, it was organizing. More troubling were reports from within the Jedi. Master Kakruk was training a new generation on Typhus. Young Force sensitives were being smuggled to safety, taught in secret, prepared for a long war. The Jedi had learned patience, and patient Jedi were dangerous. Crate escalated the hunt. Massive bounties for Jedi. Sith Lords scouring refugee planets, and he authorized Darth Maladi to develop the Omega Red virus, a biotoxin targeting midi-chlorians that would kill every Force sensitive in the galaxy except Sith, protected by inoculation. It was monstrous. Crate approved without hesitation. But his own condition worsened. The coral infection spread faster now, covering more of his torso, creeping up his neck. The pain grew harder to ignore. He spent increasing time in meditation and stasis, channeling agony into dark side power. He knew his time was running out. This knowledge drove him to search desperately for Darth Andadu's essence transfer techniques. He experimented on captured Jedi, trying to possess new bodies. None of it worked reliably. Cade Skywalker's unique Force healing ability became critical. If Crate could turn Cade, convince him to heal the coral infection, then perhaps decades more of rule were possible. But Cade remained free, and Crate's strength faded. By 137 AB, the Emperor spent as much time in stasis as awake. Darth Wylock III governed in his name, maintaining the facade of complete control. It was during one stasis period that the Mon Calamari situation exploded. Intelligence confirmed they had been quietly supporting Admiral Stasi for years, providing supplies and repairs. They had helped Stasi steal the Imperius, a new star destroyer that was supposed to be the fleet's pride. When Crate woke, Wylock presented the evidence. "Make an example," Krayt ordered. "Show the galaxy what defiance costs." Wylock hesitated. "My lord, billions of beings live on Dak. Too harsh a response could turn more systems against us." Krayt's eyes burned with dark fury. "I do not care about opinion. I care about order. The Mon Calamari chose to support our enemies. All of them will pay." And with that command, the genocide began. The horror that would follow would be remembered as one of the Empire's darkest acts. But Darth Krayt, dying from coral spreading through his body, obsessed with crushing resistance before time ran out, felt only satisfaction at wielding absolute power without mercy. Darth Krayt arrived at Dak personally, his presence announced by the shadow of his Star Destroyer blocking out the sun. The Mon Calamari Council was summoned to New Coral City, the planetary capital, where they waited nervously in the grand chamber overlooking the ocean. When Krayt entered, the temperature seemed to drop. His coral armor was visible now, patches of reddish growth spreading across his chest and shoulders beneath his robes. His movements were measured, each step deliberate, as though motion itself caused pain. He did not waste time on speeches or explanations. 10% of the Mon Calamari population are to be executed. Effective, immediately. We will start with those at hand. The council erupted in protests. Gil Gahan, the former triumvir who had secretly aided Admiral Stasi, stepped forward desperately. "My lord, punish me if you must, but the people are innocent. They knew nothing of my actions." Krayt's hand shot out. Gahan's body lifted into the air, throat constricting under invisible pressure. The other council members watched in horror as their colleague's face turned purple, his legs kicking uselessly. "You are all guilty," Krayt said quietly. "Your species chose to support my enemies. Now your species will learn what that choice costs." He released the Force grip. Gahan's body crumpled to the floor, lifeless. Before the council could react, Sith Lords emerged from the shadows, lightsabers igniting. Stormtroopers poured through the doors. The massacre began with the council itself. Every Mon Calamari representative was cut down where they stood. Even Quarren who objected were killed, Krayt making it clear that questioning his will meant death regardless of species. The slaughter spread through New Coral City within the hour. Sith troopers moved through the streets methodically, executing every 10th Mon Calamari they encountered. The broadcasts went live across the HoloNet. Krayt wanted the galaxy to watch, wanted everyone to see what happened to those who defied the Sith Empire. After the initial executions, Krayt issued his full decree. All surviving Mon Calamari in the galaxy would be interred in work camps. Their culture would be erased, their history purged. The species itself would eventually be extinct, worn down by labor and disease and despair. Darth Azad, a Quarren Sith Lord, was left to oversee the genocide. He set about his task with bureaucratic efficiency, establishing camps throughout Dak's oceans, hunting refugees who fled to the depths, creating a system designed to kill slowly rather than all at once. The galaxy reacted with horror. Some systems, terrified of similar treatment, pledged even stronger loyalty to Krayt. Others quietly began supporting the resistance, allowing their ships to join Admiral Stasi, smuggling refugees off-world when they could. The genocide backfired strategically. Instead of cowing opposition, it stiffened resolve. But Darth Krayt, consumed by pain and obsession, could not see it. Because the effort of traveling to Dak, of using the Force to kill Gahan, of maintaining his authority while his body screamed in agony, had cost him more than he could afford. When he returned to Coruscant, he collapsed in his private chambers. The coral had spread further during the trip, covering new areas of his chest, sending tendrils up his neck. The pain was no longer manageable through meditation alone. His dark side power, vast as it was, could not overcome simple biology forever. Darth Wyalok III found him there, unconscious, barely breathing. The Chalgrian had served 3 generations of his family in service to Krayt, had governed the Empire during the Master's stasis periods, had never once questioned or betrayed. But seeing Krayt like this, broken and dying, Wyalok faced a crisis of faith. The one Sith was built on Krayt's vision. His personal power held it together. His authority prevented the old Sith habit of infighting and betrayal. Without him, what would the Order become? Would it collapse into chaos like every Sith regime before it? Would 100 Sith Lords begin fighting for supremacy the moment their master died? Wyalok had spent his entire life building and maintaining this order. He believed in the rule of one absolutely. He saw it as the evolution of Sith philosophy, the answer to millennia of failure. But the rule of one depended on the one, and the one was dying. Wyalok placed Krayt in a stasis pod, the medical technology slowing his metabolism, giving his body time to heal. The plan was for a few weeks of rest, a month at most. Weeks passed. Krayt did not wake. The coral continued spreading even in stasis, slower but relentlessly. Medical droids reported that the infection had reached a critical threshold. The Master's body was losing the fight. Wyalok governed in Krayt's name, issuing orders as he always had during stasis periods. But this time felt different. This time he suspected Krayt might never wake at all. Months passed. The Empire continued functioning smoothly. Wyalok's administration was efficient, his decisions sound. Some Sith Lords began to wonder if they even needed Christ to return. The Order ran well under the Regent's guidance, but Darth Nihil grew suspicious. Krayt's most loyal hand demanded audiences with the Master, only to be told recovery required isolation. He sensed something wrong, though he could not identify what. Wyalok faced an impossible choice. Wake Krayt and watch the Order lose its leader within months as the coral finished consuming him. Or let nature take its course, let the Master die peacefully in stasis, and guide the one Sith into a new era with collective leadership instead of a single Dark Lord. The choice tormented him. He meditated on it for weeks, searching for an answer that preserved both Christ's vision and the Order's survival. Finally, he made his decision. Late one night, Wyalok entered the stasis chamber alone. He stood over Krayt's unconscious form, looking at the Master who had created everything he believed in. The being who had forged the one Sith from nothing, who had proven that Sith could work together, who had conquered the galaxy through patience rather than the chaotic ambition of their predecessors. "I am sorry," Wyalok whispered, "but the Order is greater than any one being, even you." He raised his hands. Force lightning crackled from his fingertips, arcing into the stasis pod. The energy surged through Krayt's body, meant to stop his heart, to end his suffering, and free the one Sith from dependence on a dying leader. But the coral armor, the very infection killing Krayt, saved his life. The organic material absorbed much of the lightning, dispersing it, protecting vital organs. Krayt's heart continued beating, though he slipped deeper into coma. Wyalok tried again. More lightning, more power. The pod's instruments screamed warnings, but still Krayt's life signs persisted. Finally exhausted, Wyalok stopped. He had failed to grant his master a clean death. Instead, he had simply ensured Krayt would never wake naturally, trapped in coma indefinitely. The Chagrian stared at what he had done, horror and determination warring within him. He could not undo it, could not admit it. The only path forward was to continue the deception, to rule in Krayt's name, while telling the other hands that the Master still recovered from battle wounds. So Wyalok sealed the chamber, erased security recordings, and emerged to issue orders as the voice of the Emperor. He told the other Sith that Krayt had been wounded fighting a Jedi ambush, that recovery would take time, that the Regent would govern until the Master was ready to resume command. Most accepted the explanation. But Darth Nihil's suspicions deepened. Something was profoundly wrong. He could feel it in the Force, a disturbance he could not quite identify. While Ryloth struggled with his betrayal, the Mon Calamari genocide continued. Admiral Stasi, hearing of the slaughter, made a desperate decision. He would risk his entire fleet to save as many Mon Calamari as possible. The rescue operation at Dak became legendary. Stasi's ships appeared in orbit, fought through Sith defenses, and began evacuating refugees. The operation was chaos, a running battle that lasted 3 days, but when Stasi finally retreated, he had saved millions. Only millions out of 27 billion, a drop in the ocean. But those who survived would remember that someone had tried, that the Resistance had risked everything to save them. The Mon Calamari Rangers formed from the survivors who remained on Dak, fighting a guerrilla war in the planet's deep oceans. Imperial Knight Tri-Sinde, stranded during the rescue operation, joined their cause. Together they harassed Sith forces, destroyed weapons, saved refugees when they could. Darth Azard, frustrated by the Resistance, commissioned Volisan to create a sea leviathan, a massive creature enhanced through Sith alchemy, capable of hunting in Dak's depths. The beast was unleashed on a refugee camp as demonstration. It consumed hundreds in minutes, absorbing their life force, becoming stronger with each kill. But the Rangers, aided by Cinder's Force abilities, managed to destroy the Leviathan by luring it into a devil's squid nest. The creatures swarmed the Sith weapon, dragging it into an abyss. Small victories, temporary respites in a genocide that was systematically erasing an entire species, but they mattered. They kept hope alive. On Coruscant, Ryloth governed with increasing confidence. He implemented policies more moderate than Krayt would have chosen, reducing some of the harshest suppressions, attempting to win loyalty through competence rather than pure terror. Some worlds responded positively. Others saw it as weakness. The Empire's unity, so strong under Krayt's iron will, began developing hairline fractures, and in his stasis pod, Darth Krayt dreamed. His consciousness, trapped between life and death, wandered through visions. He saw the one Sith collapsing without him, saw his hands fighting each other for supremacy, saw everything he had built crumbling into the same chaos that had destroyed every previous Sith order. He saw Ryloth standing over his body, lightning crackling from his hands. He saw betrayal, and deep in his comatose mind, rage began to build. Not the hot fury that burns bright and fades, but cold, patient, murderous rage. The kind that would wait months or years for the perfect moment to strike back. Darth Krayt was dying, but he was not dead yet. And when he woke, if he woke, Ryloth would learn that some betrayals could never be forgiven. Even from the most loyal servant, even after a century of perfect service. Even if the betrayal came from a place of love for the order they had built together. The rule of one demanded absolute loyalty. Ryloth had broken that rule, and the price would be measured in blood. Months passed with Krayt in his coma while Ryloth maintained the illusion of temporary recovery. The deception would have held if not for a rogue Jedi who wanted nothing to do with his destiny. Cade Skywalker had spent years running from his heritage, from the Force, from the expectations that came with his family name. He worked as a bounty hunter, took death sticks to dull his Force sensitivity, surrounded himself with non-Jedi who did not care about prophecy or legacy. But Darth Talon kept finding him, kept hunting him, and slowly, inevitably, Cade was pulled back into the war he wanted no part of. His unique ability made him a target. Unlike most Force healers who could mend wounds and cure diseases, Cade could pull beings back from the very edge of death. could reach into the Force and yank someone's spirit back when it had already started to leave their body. It was a power that terrified him because it felt too much like playing God. Darth Krayt had sensed this ability through the Force, had seen visions of Cade healing him, purging the coral infection, granting him decades more of life. The obsession with converting a Skywalker had grown into desperate need as Krayt's condition worsened. But Kray slept in his coma, unaware that the Alliance and Fields Empire had finally coordinated their largest offensive. The target was Coruscant itself. Not to hold it, they knew they lacked the strength for occupation, but to strike a symbolic blow, to prove the Sith Empire was not invincible. Cade joined the assault, not out of patriotism, but because his friends convinced him, because doing nothing while the Sith ruled felt worse than fighting, and because he had questions only Darth Krayt could answer. The combined fleet dropped from hyperspace around Coruscant in a perfectly coordinated strike. Alliance ships from one vector, Veil's Imperial forces from another, Jedi strike teams infiltrating the surface on captured transports. The Sith responded with overwhelming force, but they were caught off guard. For the first time since seizing power, they faced a united enemy attacking with actual coordination. The space battle raged across Coruscant's orbit while Cade and his team slipped through the chaos. They landed near the Sith temple, fought through patrols, penetrated deeper into the structure than anyone thought possible. Cade followed his Force senses. He could feel Krayt's presence, faint but distinctive, somewhere in the temple's depths. The Dark Lord's signature in the Force was unmistakable, a black hole of power and pain. But something was wrong. The presence felt dormant, not dead, but not truly alive either. They found the stasis chamber hidden behind layers of security. Cade approached the pod cautiously, looking at the figure inside. Darth Krayt lay motionless, his body covered in coral armor that seemed to pulse with faint light. Medical instruments monitored his failing vitals. "He is dying," Cade said quietly. "Has been for months." "Then let him die," Jariah Sin replied. "One less Sith to worry about." But Cade studied the pod more closely, saw the scorch marks inside, saw evidence of Force lightning, saw signs that someone had tried to kill Krayt while he was helpless. Someone tried to murder him. Before they could investigate further, the chamber doors opened. Darth Wyerlock entered, flanked by Sith guards. The Chagrian's eyes widened, seeing the intruders, then narrowed with calculation. "You should not be here," Wyerlock said calmly. Cade ignited his lightsaber. "Neither should you apparently. What happened? Who tried to kill him?" Wyerlock hesitated, caught between truths. Then he made a choice. "I did. The coral infection is killing him. Has been for years. He would have died anyway, so I attempted to grant him a clean death and spare the one Sith the chaos of losing its master." "You failed," Cade observed. "The coral armor protected him." Wyerlock's voice carried genuine regret. "Now he lingers in coma, neither alive nor dead, the worst possible outcome. So you rule in his name. Keep him locked away. Pretend he is still in control." "The Empire requires stability," Wyerlock replied. "Christ built something unprecedented. An order of Sith who actually cooperate, who work toward collective goals rather than individual glory. But it all depends on him. Without Christ, the one Sith may collapse into the same infighting that destroyed every previous Sith regime." Cade understood the logic, even agreed with parts of it. A united enemy was more dangerous than a fractured one. But Wyerlock's betrayal revealed the fundamental weakness in the rule of one. It could not survive its creator's death. "You want to let him die," Cade said. "Keep ruling without him." "I want to preserve what he built," Wyerlock corrected. "Even if that means the Master does not survive." "Wrong answer." Cade did not think, did not plan, did not consider consequences. His Jedi instincts, suppressed for years, suddenly surged to the surface. He saw someone dying and reached for the Force to heal them. His hands touched the stasis pod. Power flowed through him into Crate, seeking the damage, finding the coral infection and the Force lightning scars and the century of accumulated pain. Cord's ability was not gentle healing. It was violent resurrection, yanking life back into a body that had started to let go. The coral armor cracked. Pieces fell away, shattering on the floor. Kright's eyes snapped open, glowing with dark side fury. Weirlock's face went pale. "No, Master, I can explain." Krait rose from the stasis pod with terrifying speed. His body, freed from the worst of the coral infection by Cade's healing, moved with strength he had not possessed in decades. He was not fully cured. The coral remained in places, but enough had been purged that he could function without constant agony. He looked at Weirlock, at the Chagrian who had served 3 generations of his family in perfect loyalty, who had governed the Empire competently during stasis periods, who had tried to kill him. "You betrayed me." Weirlock raised his hands defensively. "I tried to save the Order. You were dying. The one Sith needs leadership, and you could no longer provide it. I did what I thought necessary. You thought wrong." The duel was brief and brutal. Weirlock was powerful, a skilled combatant who had trained for decades, but Kryze had been the Dark Lord of the Sith for over a century, had mastered techniques Weirlock had only studied, and now fought with the fury of absolute betrayal. Their lightsabers clashed once, twice. On the 3rd strike, Krait disarmed Weirlock, sending his weapon spinning across the chamber. Then Krait's hand closed around the Chagrian's throat. "The rule of one demands absolute loyalty," Krait said quietly. "You broke that rule. Now you pay the price." He crushed Weirlock's throat with the Force. The Chagrian collapsed, gasping, dying slowly enough to understand what his betrayal had cost. Krait turned to Cade. "You healed me. Why?" Cade shrugged, already regretting the impulse. "Jedi instinct. I see someone dying. I try to save them, even if they are galactic tyrants." Kryze studied him with disturbing intensity. "You have given me new life. For that I offer you a choice. Join me. Become my hand. Use your power to build rather than hide from it." Cade laughed bitterly. "Not a chance. I am not turning Sith just because I made one stupid healing decision." "Then you will die." The duel that followed was everything the Sith Lord expected, and the reluctant Jedi feared. Krait pressed Cade relentlessly, testing his skills, probing his defenses, trying to break through to the darkness he sensed beneath the surface. But Cade's friends intervened. Jariah Sind and Delia Blue, bounty hunters with no Force sensitivity, but plenty of combat experience, opened fire on Krait. Their blaster bolts forced him back, gave Cade space to disengage. "We are leaving," Sin shouted, "right now." They fled through the temple as alarms blared. The space battle raged above. Jedi strike teams fought Sith throughout Coruscant's government district. The coordinated assault was falling apart under fierce resistance. Krait emerged onto the temple steps to find his empire under attack for the first time since he had seized it. He reached out through the Force, sending his power across the entire planet, calling every Sith to defend Coruscant. "I have returned." His voice echoed through the dark side. "I have been through death and conquered it. All who serve the one Sith, hear me now. Drive these invaders from our capital. Show them the cost of defiance." The Sith response intensified immediately. Krait's presence, his unmistakable authority, galvanized defenders. The assault began to falter. Darth Nihil, relieved and enraged in equal measure, led a counterattack that drove Jedi strike teams back to their ships. The space battle turned as fresh Sith reinforcements arrived. Within hours, the Alliance and field forces were retreating, their symbolic strike achieved but holding Coruscant impossible. In the aftermath, Kryze stood among the ruins and assessed the damage. Weistelok dead. The deception revealed, his own weakness exposed to the entire Order. But he was alive, healed enough to function, and the one Sith had not collapsed without him. That was the critical discovery. The Order had survived months of his absence, governed competently by a regent. Perhaps the rule of one was stronger than he thought. Perhaps it could survive its creator after all. But first, he would ensure no one else ever questioned his authority. No one else would ever believe him weak enough to betray. He summoned his hands and issued orders. Hunt down every being involved in the assault, find Cade Skywalker, and make examples of anyone who thought the Sith Empire could be challenged. The war was entering its final phase, and Darth Kryze, resurrected and renewed, intended to end it with overwhelming brutality. The year following Kryze's resurrection was the bloodiest of the entire war. The Dark Lord, no longer weakened by constant pain, threw himself into crushing the Resistance with fanatical intensity. But something had changed. The invincibility he once projected had cracked. The galaxy had seen him vulnerable, had learned he could be hurt. The Resistance smelled blood. Admiral Stasi coordinated with Roan Fel to launch continuous raids across Imperial territory. They could not win major battles, but they could bleed the Empire slowly. Destroy supply depots, assassinate governors, make occupation costly. The surviving Jedi emerged from hiding more frequently, striking at isolated Sith Lords, rescuing prisoners, slowly rebuilding their numbers through rescued Force-sensitive children. And Cade Skywalker, guilty about healing the galaxy's worst tyrant, threw himself into the fight with reckless determination. If he had given Krayt more life, then he would spend that life making the Sith Emperor regret it. Kryze's obsession with Cade intensified. The Skywalker had saved him, then rejected him, then actively fought against him. It was personal now, not strategic, not philosophical, personal. Darth Talon finally captured Cade on Vendaxa during a botched rescue operation. She brought him to Coruscant in binders, delivering him to Krayt's throne room. The Dark Lord looked at the last Skywalker with something approaching satisfaction. You saved my life. Now I will save your soul. You will become my apprentice. Together we will bring true order to the galaxy. Cade spat blood. I would rather die. That can be arranged, but first you will watch what happens to those who defy me. Kryze showed him holographic footage of Dak. The Mon Calamari genocide had continued in his absence, now approaching completion. Billions dead. The species facing extinction, all because they had supported the Resistance. Join me, and I will end it. Refuse, and I will find other species to make examples of. Cade stared at the images, horror and rage warring within him. You are a monster. I am evolution. The galaxy is a garden, and I am pruning the weak growth so the strong can flourish. You have the power to heal. Imagine what we could accomplish together. Imagine the order we could create. For a moment, just a moment, Cade considered it. The dark side whispered seductive promises, power to stop the suffering, authority to enforce peace, an end to the chaos through strength. Then he remembered what his grandfather had taught him through holocron recordings. Anakin Skywalker had made similar compromises, had believed the ends justified the means, had become Darth Vader and burned the galaxy. Never, Cade said quietly. I am a Skywalker. We do not kneel to Sith. Kryze's expression hardened. Then you will die, but slowly, and your friends will die first, so you understand the cost of defiance. But before he could carry out the threat, Alarms blared throughout the temple. A massive fleet had just dropped from hyperspace. The Alliance remnant, the Empire in exile, every resistance cell that could muster a ship. They were attacking Coruscant again. Not a raid this time, a full invasion. Crate rose from his throne, frustrated by the interruption, but also eager for the fight. Let them come. I will end this war today. The Battle of Coruscant became the largest space engagement since the Clone Wars, the thousands of ships clashing in orbit, of fighters weaving through capital ship formations, Jedi and Sith dueling in the void. On the surface, resistance forces landed throughout the government district. Their goal was singular: reach the Sith temple, kill Darth Krayt, decapitate the Empire. Cade escaped during the chaos, his cell door opening as power fluctuated. He fought his way through the temple, recovering his lightsaber, searching for an exit. Instead, he found the hidden chamber, where Krayt had been creating his ultimate weapon. Row after row of stasis pods containing Sith troopers, not the coral-implanted soldiers already deployed, but something worse. Force sensitives kidnapped over years, mutilated, enhanced with cybernetics, programmed with absolute loyalty. Each one wielded a lightsaber. Each one had basic force abilities, and there were thousands of them. Krayt appeared behind Cade. My final army. Force users who will never betray me, never question, never fail. When I release them, the resistance will be crushed in hours. Cade stared at the pods in horror. You are creating slaves. These were people. They were weak. I made them strong. I gave their lives purpose. You gave them chains. Their duel began there, among the sleeping army, lightsabers clashing in crimson and blue flashes. Krayt fought with precision born of a century of practice. Krayt fought with desperation and rage, his technique rough but powered by absolute conviction. The battle was even for perhaps a minute. Then Jedi reinforcements arrived. Master Krook, Imperial Knight Antares Draco. A dozen others. They poured into the chamber, attacking Krayt from all sides. The Dark Lord laughed. Finally, a worthy challenge. What followed was not a duel, but a war condensed into one room. Krayt held off multiple opponents simultaneously, his mastery of the Force allowing him to anticipate attacks, to counter from impossible angles, to kill Jedi who got too close. But he was one being, no matter how powerful, and they were many. Slowly, inevitably, they wore him down. A strike got through his defenses, then another. The coral armor that remained absorbed some damage, but not enough. Krayt killed 4 Jedi before they brought him to his knees. Killed 2 more even wounded, but eventually his strength failed. Cade stood over him, lightsaber raised for the final strike. Any last words? Krayt looked up at the Skywalker descendant and smiled through bloodied teeth. The one Sith will survive me. I built something greater than myself. You have won today, but the dark side is patient, and one day my order will return. Cade brought his lightsaber down. Darth Krayt, the dragon of the Sith, the architect of the one Sith, the emperor who had nearly conquered the galaxy, died on the floor of his own temple. His death rippled through the Force. Every Sith felt it. The Sith troopers throughout the galaxy, programmed with absolute loyalty to Krayt specifically, went berserk. They made suicidal attacks against any target available, designed not to outlive their master. The one Sith leadership fractured immediately. Some hands tried to claim authority. Others fled to the unknown regions. Without Krayt's unifying presence, the Order began collapsing into exactly the infighting he had spent a century preventing. Darth Talon escaped Coruscant with a handful of loyal followers carrying holocrons of Krayt's teachings. She would preserve the philosophy even if the Empire fell. Darth Nihil died defending the temple, overwhelmed by Imperial knights. He fought until his last breath, still believing in the rule of one, still loyal to a master who was already dead. The Sith Empire did not fall immediately. It took months of fighting to reclaim worlds, to root out governors, to dismantle the apparatus Krayt had built. But without its creator, without the Dark Lord who had made unity possible, it crumbled. Roden fell, reclaimed the Imperial throne. Admiral Stasi helped rebuild the Alliance, though in a new form that learned from past mistakes. The Jedi began the slow process of recovery, knowing they had come within days of complete extinction. And Cade Skywalker, having killed the being whose life he had saved, walked away from it all. He had played his part, had done what Skywalkers always seemed destined to do. Now he wanted peace. The galaxy would spend years healing from the Sith Imperial War. Worlds had been devastated, entire species nearly wiped out, trillions dead. The scars would last for generations. But the one Sith was broken. The rule of one proven to have the same fatal flaw as every Sith philosophy before it. It could not survive its creator, could not transcend the mortal limitations of a single being, no matter how powerful. Darth Krayt had been right about one thing, though. The dark side was patient, and somewhere in the unknown regions, Darth Talon and the survivors studied their master's teachings, preserved his holocrons, and waited. The Sith would return. They always did. But for now, the galaxy could breathe, could rebuild, could hope that maybe, just maybe, this time the peace would last. The years following Darth Krayt's death were years of slow healing, the kind of recovery that takes not months, but generations. The Sith Imperial War had lasted from 127 to 138 ABE, 11 years of constant bloodshed that touched nearly every world in the galaxy. The peace that followed was fragile, built on exhaustion as much as hope. Rome fell, reclaimed the imperial throne, but he ruled a very different empire than his grandfather had envisioned. This was not Palpatine's regime reborn. It was something newer, something that had learned from catastrophic failure. Fel worked with the Reformed Alliance rather than against it. He employed Jedi as advisors rather than hunting them. His Imperial Knights served as protectors rather than enforcers. Some called it weakness, others called it wisdom, but it held. Admiral Gar Stasi became a legend in his own lifetime. The man who had kept the Alliance alive through impossible odds, who had saved millions of Mon Calamari from genocide, who had never surrendered even when defeat seemed certain. He helped architect the new galactic government, a hybrid system that balanced imperial efficiency with Alliance representation. The Mon Calamari slowly returned to Dak. The planet had been poisoned by Darth Wylock's final order, its oceans turned toxic by viral spores. But Republic scientists worked for years to cleanse the waters, to restore the ecosystem, to make the homeworld livable again. It would take decades, but the Mon Calamari were patient. They had survived extinction. They could survive the wait. The Jedi Order faced perhaps the hardest path. Master Kurg led the survivors in rebuilding, but the trauma ran deep. An entire generation of Jedi had watched their temples burn, had seen their masters killed, had spent years hiding like criminals in their own galaxy. That kind of wound does not heal quickly. They built new temples on worlds far from Coruscant, choosing to decentralize rather than create another target. They trained students differently, emphasizing practical survival alongside philosophy. They acknowledged that sometimes passivity enabled evil rather than preventing it. And they remembered. Holocrons were created documenting every detail of the Sith Imperial War, every mistake, every warning sign they had missed, so that future generations would recognize darkness when it rose again. Because the Jedi understood something now that they had once denied. The dark side was not an aberration. It was not a temporary corruption that could be permanently defeated. It was part of the Force itself, eternally present, eternally waiting. The best they could hope for was balance, vigilance, the strength to face darkness when it inevitably returned. Cade Skywalker became perhaps the most reluctant hero in his family's long history. He had killed Darth Krayt, had played a crucial role in ending the war. But unlike his ancestors, he wanted no part of the legend. He disappeared after the final battle, going back to the Outer Rim, back to a life of anonymity. Some said he continued working as a bounty hunter. Others claimed he had started training a few students quietly, passing on what he knew without calling it a Jedi Academy. The truth remained elusive, but occasionally beings in desperate situations would report being saved by a scarred man with a blue lightsaber who disappeared before they could thank him. The Skywalker legacy continued, as it always had, quietly, reluctantly, but continuing nonetheless. The one Sith scattered to the unknown regions became a subject of intense debate among historians and Force scholars. Darth Krayt had accomplished something unprecedented. He had united hundreds of Sith under a single vision without the constant betrayals that had destroyed every previous dark side order. For over a century, the one Sith had functioned with genuine cooperation and shared purpose. So why did it fail? Some argued it was the inevitable weakness of the dark side itself. That power built on hatred and domination could never create lasting stability, no matter how cleverly organized. Others pointed to the fundamental flaw in the rule of one. It required a singular being of such extraordinary power and vision that their death would inevitably create a vacuum nothing could fill. Krayt had not built institutions strong enough to survive him. He had built an order that worshipped him, and when he died, the object of worship disappeared. A few scholars suggested that the one Sith had actually proven something important, that dark side users could cooperate if given proper structure and philosophy, that the real failure was not the philosophy itself, but Krayt's inability to create a succession system. If he had trained an heir, had established clear protocols for leadership transition, perhaps the one Sith would have survived. These debates would continue for generations, but the practical result was clear. The one Sith as an organized power was broken. The survivors who fled to the unknown regions remained scattered, preserving knowledge but lacking the numbers or coordination to threaten the galaxy again. Darth Talon, who had escaped with Krayt's holocrons and teachings, became a ghost story. Some claimed she still lived, impossibly old, training students in secret. Others insisted she had died within years of Krayt's fall. The truth, like so much about the Sith, remained hidden in shadow. But her legacy persisted through the holocrons she preserved. Krayt's teachings about unity and patience, his analysis of why previous Sith had failed, his vision of an order that could transcend individual ambition. Dangerous knowledge, carefully guarded by those few who knew it existed. The galaxy itself slowly forgot the details of the war. New generations grew up, knowing Darth Krayt only as a historical figure, a monster from their grandparents' time. The Sith became bogeymen again, scary stories to frighten children, not immediate threats. This forgetfulness worried the Jedi. They understood that each generation had to relearn the same lessons, that complacency enabled darkness, that the price of peace was eternal vigilance. But even Jedi grew tired. Even Guardians needed rest, and so the galaxy settled into its new normal. Neither perfect peace nor total war, but something in between. Life continued. Beings loved and worked and dreamed. The Force flowed through all of them, light and dark in eternal balance. On Korriban, Darth Krayt's body was entombed in the Valley of the Dark Lords, not with honor, but with warning. His tomb bore inscriptions telling his story as cautionary tale. Here lies ambition that nearly succeeded. Here lies vision that could not survive its creator. Here lies proof that even unity cannot save those who build on hatred. Pilgrims came occasionally, some Jedi seeking to understand their enemy, some dark side curious seeking forgotten power. The tomb remained sealed, guarded, a monument to what the Sith had been and what they might become again. Because the dark side never truly died. It waited in quiet hearts, in desperate moments, in beings who looked at injustice and decided mercy was weakness. The Sith might fall, but the darkness they represented was fundamental to existence itself. And that was not entirely a bad thing. The Force required balance. Light without dark became blinding rigidity. Dark without light became consuming chaos. Both were necessary. Both would always exist. The key was not eliminating either side. It was maintaining the balance, ensuring neither dominated completely, walking the narrow path between extremes. Difficult work, work that never truly ended, but work worth doing nonetheless. Somewhere in the unknown regions, on a world whose name was forgotten even by its inhabitants, a young being touched the Force for the first time, felt power surge through them, made a choice about how to use that power. Light or dark, construction or destruction, unity or division. The same choice made by countless beings across countless generations. The same choice that would be made countless times more. The eternal dance of the Force continuing through ages, through empires, through the rise and fall of civilizations. And in that continuity, that endless cycle, there was something almost peaceful. The knowledge that no single being's choices determined everything, that the galaxy was larger than any one vision, that balance eventually asserted itself, no matter how far the pendulum swung. Darth Krayt had tried to impose his vision on the galaxy, had nearly succeeded. But in the end, the Force itself had other plans, balance restored, order and chaos, finding equilibrium again. The stars continued their ancient dance across the void. Worlds spun through darkness toward distant suns. In the great silence between galaxies, the Force flowed eternal and unchanging. Neither light nor dark, neither Jedi nor Sith, simply existence in its purest form. And beings throughout the galaxy, tired from their struggles, lay down to rest. Soldiers who had fought in the war, children born in its aftermath, elderly who had seen empires rise and fall, all of them surrendering to sleep, to dreams, to the peaceful darkness that comes at the end of each day. Their individual stories mattered. Their choices shaped the future, but they were also part of something infinitely larger. Drops of water in an ocean spanning galaxies, stars in a sky too vast to comprehend. And in that vastness, in that infinite expanse, there was comfort. The knowledge that no burden had to be carried alone. That the Force itself, whatever it truly was, connected every living thing in ways beyond understanding. So rest now, traveler of galactic histories. The story of the one Sith has been told, their rise and fall documented, their legacy examined, the lessons learned and recorded for those who come after. The stars will continue their journey without observation. The Force will flow through sleeping minds and waking alike. And tomorrow, when light returns, the galaxy will still be there, still turning, still full of stories waiting to be discovered. But for now, there is only peace. Only the gentle darkness of restful sleep. Only the quiet knowledge that you have journeyed far and earned your rest. Dream of distant stars, if you dream at all. Dream of a galaxy where balance holds and hope persists despite darkness. Dream of the endless cycle continuing long after memory fades. The one Sith rose, believing unity would break the cycle. They proved that even unified darkness eventually falls to light, and the Force flows eternal, patient and timeless, watching civilizations rise and fall like waves upon an endless shore. May the Force be with you wherever your dreams may lead, until the next story calls you back to these ancient tales of light and shadow, of empires and rebellions, of choices that echo across generations. Rest well, the galaxy will be waiting when you wake.